In today's video, I am going to share with you how I turned second-hand IKEA PAX wardrobes into a wooden accent wall in my bedroom. This will become a wall that doesn't only create storage for all of our clothes, but also a wall that helps to create a serene feeling in our bedroom. As humans, we do feel more calm, grounded, and relaxed when we are surrounded by natural materials. And because of this, I always try to incorporate as much wood, stone, or other plant materials into the design of my bedrooms. So come along as we are building the main natural material element of this bedroom. If you are new here, my name is Linnea and you are watching a series where I, as an architect, are renovating 11 homes to see if I can build a sustainable real estate business that doesn't compromise the well-being of people and planet. Let's start with the design of this built-in solution. And what we are working with is this empty wall that has a doorway not centered but slightly to the right side if you're standing in a room and looking at the wall. Based on the measurements of this wall as well as the measurements of IKEA's PAX wardrobe system, it became clear that I needed to source two 50-centimeter wide PAX wardrobes and one that is 75 centimeters wide. This would allow me to maximize the amount of storage on this wall and became my base parameters to work within the design. In my next step in the design process, I went to gather some inspiration. How have other people been working with plywood to transform wardrobes into built-in solutions? And after doing some search, I found these three inspiration images that I have been using as my base and guide for the design. And the key thing here is that you can see that they are really working with creating the tall vertical lines, allowing the plywood to stretch from the ceiling to the floor. So this was something that I really wanted to bring into the design and something that I carried into my sketching process. So moving on, I wanted to start placing the wardrobes more precisely where I want. And I knew that one would be able to fit on the right-hand side. This would be a 50-centimeter wide one. It would be a squeeze, but I think I would be able to fit it. Then on the other side, I put the 50-centimeter wide one together with the 75-centimeter wide one and placed it sort of with an equal sized gap between the door and these wardrobes and the wall and these wardrobes. But when I started to draw this out, it soon dawned on me that, well, I do have an issue. These walls are not perfectly straight and neither is the ceiling nor the floor. This meant that if I was going to create doors that stretch from the floor to the ceiling, I would risk not being able to open them. The other thing that this meant is that if I placed the wardrobes straight up to the edge of the wall, I would probably end up with some gaps in relation to how the wall is uneven. So I needed to find a solution for this. And after thinking and sketching a couple of different options, I decided to create what I call a shadow gap around all the doors that I would fit. This allows me to have some gap at the top and the bottom so that I can easily open the doors without them hitting the ceiling or the floor. It also meant that I could place the wardrobe slightly further into the room and then create filler pieces on the sides. And if there would be any gaps, I could fill them in with some kind of wall compound, wood filler. There are many different options to go with. And to be honest, it also allows me to create this feel still that this is one cohesive wall. And this was really key to me, that it was one whole piece, and therefore, I didn't want to start working with crown molding or other kinds of trim pieces. I wanted to keep it clean, and I think these shadow gaps really allowed me to do that. The next challenge that I faced in my design process was that there is an electrical switch that I needed to be able to place on the side of the wardrobe. This means that I needed to have the space to fit the actual socket for the switch, and I needed space enough to be able to run the cords. And to deal with this, I ended up moving the wardrobes on the left-hand side as close to the wall that I could, still creating that shadow gap, because this would give me an empty gap where I would put a filler piece, and behind this gap, I could run the wires and put in the switch itself. And even if this became a design choice that I made out of sort of necessity, I actually prefer this look because it creates fewer lines. And when we have fewer lines, the design becomes less busy in general. And since I was really going for a calm kind of one-piece look, I really enjoyed not having two filler pieces on the left-hand side, but just one. And at this point, I was happy with how everything looked, and I decided that it was time to start building. Because when you start building, you also realize new things that often require you to make minor design decisions along the way. So let's get moving to the building process. So what's happened so far is that Joachim has cut out all the studs and we have placed them, but we haven't attached them. So the idea is to start over here and attach everything, build the PAX wardrobe, put it in place and test it so that we are sure that the dimensions that we have measured and counted for are correct before we then move on with the rest. To mark where we were going to drill pilot holes that we will later use to secure all the studs in place, we simply put screws through the wooden studs in order to leave a mark on the other side. And with everything marked out, I was able to drill the pilot holes so that we then were able to screw everything very securely in place. Then we moved on to start building the first PAX wardrobe. Since this was a second-hand wardrobe, some of the screws were already in place and it was a fairly quick process to just put the pieces together. To make sure that everything is square, you can measure the diagonals of the wardrobe. If they're the same length, you know that everything is just like it should be. Before testing if the wardrobe would fit next to the door, we needed to remove the front edge of the PAX closet, so that we later would be able to attach a piece of MDF that would create a smooth surface at the front. With the filler piece in place, we now lifted the wardrobe on top of the base frame and made sure that everything fit as we had planned it for. To mark exactly where the filler piece were going to sit, we used masking tape that we attached directly to the wall. Then it was time to remove the wardrobe again so that we could secure the filler piece properly. To do this, we used Superfix and then our own strength to just press the piece onto the wall. And the last step was to secure the wardrobe into the wall. After we had made sure that the wardrobe on the right-hand side of the doorway fit as we had calculated, it was time to start building the rest of the frame and attach it on the left-hand side. Joachim used the same method as we did on the right-hand side to secure everything in place. He also double measured everything to make sure that we had a squared position for the rest of the wardrobes. As there was going to be a gap between the wardrobes and the doorway on the left-hand side, Joachim also needed to build a vertical stud frame that we could secure everything into. Before we went on to place the rest of the wardrobes, we decided to build what I called the box that would sit above the door. This box was going to hang off the frame that Joachim just built. And to be able to build this box, we started by cutting out all the MDF pieces that we needed. We needed 4 pieces for the sides, 1 for the back panel, and 1 small as a middle support. You will later see what I mean by this middle support piece. Then it was time to start assembling the box. And to be able to do this, we first needed to drill pilot holes so that the wood wouldn't crack. But after having drilled all these holes, we could then simply use screws to put everything together. And with the first side ready, we moved on to the other side. This is when I realized that we also needed to pre-drill some holes that we could later use to attach all our hinges. So before actually putting the last side on, that's what I was doing. For the back piece, we only used nails. And for the front, we added an extra support piece, and then it was time to make sure that everything was smooth, both in the corners and in all the seams. To later be able to secure the box in place, Joachim drilled pilot holes so that the wood again wouldn't crack. The last step was then to paint everything. I decided to use a white paint to be able to match the inside of the PAX wardrobes. Okay, you have now watched us build this box that we're going to put up above the door. It's a bit of an experiment because it's really heavy and I will need to be able to hold it up while Joachim screws it into the ceiling, or rather into that beam that is attached to the ceiling. So I'm gonna try to film it and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm strong enough or maybe I'm not, but let's see how it goes. Luckily, we were able to make it work, so we didn't need to go and ask our neighbors for help this time. When I was away on a work trip, Joachim secured the first piece of plywood in place so that we could drill the hole and get everything ready for the electricians to come and then later on install the light switch. This is the place where the light switch was going to sit, so we had to do this before getting everything else ready. It was now time to cut all the tedious filler pieces that were going to sit between the ceiling and the wardrobes, or the floor and the wardrobes. These pieces tend to be a bit tricky to get perfect, and you often end up having this kind of cutting, testing, filing, sanding, testing again until you really get the perfect fit. Just like when we were making the box, we once again needed to make pilot holes to later secure everything in place. But first, we needed to cut out a hole as there is ventilation behind these wardrobes and somewhere the air needed to be able to flow. Then it was finally time to secure the piece in place and then to once again make sure that all the seams and corners were very smooth. Okay, so we have ended up at the point where we need to wait for the electricians, and this is because they need to install the electricity that will go to the switch over here, but also all the cords that are going to be run below all the wardrobes so that we can put an electric outlet on the other side of the closets closer to where we will be sleeping. Luckily, it didn't take too long until they were able to come, and they really did a great job securing everything in place. Finally, we could start assembling the last wardrobe. This one was the only one that we needed to assemble because the last 50 centimeter wide wardrobe we already got assembled from the start. Then we brought the last wardrobe inside and we did the same as we did on the right-hand side of the door. First putting the trim piece in place to make sure that we marked it in the right spot. Then we secured it and then we were able to secure the wardrobe itself to the wall. And Joachim was clearly very happy with the results. So we moved on to the last one, securing it both into the wall and into the other wardrobe. And this is when we really started to see how this wall was going to turn out in terms of all the closet space. And now it was time to get all those filler pieces in place and painted. I started at the bottom, and this was a very easy piece to get the right size of and secured. Then I moved on to the top piece, and here we were required to add some extra stud pieces so that we could secure all the pieces properly. And once again, I needed to make sure that all the seams and all the corners were properly smooth before painting. I decided to paint the bottom piece and the top piece in the same color as the ceiling and the baseboard. At this point, it was time to start working on the doors. And to get the best finish, we did find, after doing some research, a place very close to our home that does sell really high quality plywood at different thicknesses that we needed. And as we don't have a really big saw at home, we did actually get their help to cut the main cuts so that we would be able to make sure that these long cuts were perfectly straight, as that would really make or break the design itself. Most places do help with creating these kinds of cuts, so if you're building something yourself, do ask and see, and most likely they will be able to help you out. And with all the pieces back home, we sanded them, made sure the edges were smooth, and then we treated it twice on all the sides using a wax-based oil. We are finally starting to prepare our doors. And to do this, we're gonna try to measure out where we are putting the hinges on so that they all align with each other. The doors are going from the floor up to the ceiling, so they're not only covering the actual wardrobe, but they're actually covering the full length. So what's up now is that we are going to mark where do we put the hinges. And to do this, we first measured from where the bottom of the door would sit and to the top of the IKEA wardrobe. Then we were able to use an actual IKEA door to make sure that the hinges were placed in the perfect position. On the first door, we definitely measured everything multiple times to truly make sure that we didn't make any mistakes, because this would require us to start all over again. Using a big drill bit and a drill, we could then drill out the holes for the hinges. Now it was time to repeat the process for all of the rest of the doors. It felt so great to finally see all the doors ready to be installed on the closets. With no further ado, we simply began installing all of the doors, helping each other out, one holding it and the other one drilling everything in place. And after having put the first one in place, well, we just had to stop and admire what we had created. To attach the filler piece, we simply used some Superfix glue and some very pretty nails to secure it in place. Last up were the doors for the box above the door. These turned out to be a little bit more tricky, I'm not quite sure why, but finally we got it in place. With all the doors hung, it was finally time to add the finished piece, which was all the hardware. To make sure they were all perfectly aligned with each other, we created a little jig, and then we put up a laser level that would allow us to place the jig in the same position on all of the doors. And with the holes drilled out for the hardware, we could screw them in place. Alright guys, the day has finally come when I am going to move all of our clothes from this tiny little closet and some of our suitcases in here. So let's get started and we see how it all turns out. This was a big milestone for me. I had truly been looking forward to the moment when I would be able to add all our clothes into the closets. In the process, I also realized how many clothes we actually have, and it felt wonderful to have a good place so that we can see them all and not forget about them. Unfortunately, the last piece of plywood did not get to us in time, so the proper final reveal is something you will be able to see in our next video. But let's stop and see how incredible everything already turned out. We're so happy with the result and be able to fit all our clothes in our bedroom in this wall that also truly creates a very calm and relaxed feeling. And in our next video, we are going to finish the bedroom design. So if you're curious to see how we bring everything together, how we DIY a headboard for our bed, or how we DIY these paper lanterns that will create this cozy atmospheric lighting in the bedroom, do consider subscribing to my channel and you will not miss the next video. And if you learned something new in today's video, do give it a thumbs up and I will truly appreciate your support. And if there was something that I did not explain very well, please give me some questions in the comments below and I will try to guide you through those steps in the process. But until next time, take care and I look forward to see you then.